Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world unlike anything you have ever seen. A world without cities, without roads, without language, without history. The earth is warm, wild, and dangerous. Dense forests cover much of Africa, while endless grasslands stretch beyond the horizon. Giant predators rule the land. Massive elephants wander freely. Ancient cats hide in the tall grass, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. For every sunrise, survival is uncertain. Among all these powerful creatures lives a small group of ape-like primates. At first glance, they seem completely ordinary. They cannot build houses, they cannot make fire, they have no written language, no kingdoms, no technology. Nothing about them suggests that one day their descendants will build pyramids, cross oceans, invent computers, or even walk on the moon. Yet hidden inside these fragile creatures is one of the greatest transformations in Earth's history. This is the story of human evolution, the story of how millions of years of tiny changes slowly turned an ordinary primate into modern humans. But evolution was never a straight path. It was filled with failure. Entire human species disappeared forever. Climate changed again and again. Deadly predators hunted our ancestors. Food often became impossible to find. More than once, humanity stood on the edge of extinction. If only a few events had happened differently, none of us would be here today. Scientists believe our story begins around 7 million years ago in Africa. At that time, humans did not exist. Instead, our ancestors shared a common ancestor with modern chimpanzees. They were not chimpanzees, and they were not humans. They were something in between, a population that would slowly split into different evolutionary paths over countless generations. No one noticed this change as it happened. Evolution does not work overnight. A child is almost identical to its parents. So is the next generation, and the one after that. Only after thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of years, do these tiny differences become something entirely new. It is nature's slowest masterpiece. Around this time, Africa itself was changing. The thick forests that had protected our ancestors for millions of years slowly began to disappear. The climate became cooler and drier. Rainfall became less predictable. Large open grasslands spread across the continent. For animals that depended on trees, this was a disaster. Food became harder to find, shelter disappeared, predators became easier to spot, but so did prey. Every day became a choice: stay inside the shrinking forests, or risk entering the dangerous open plains. Our ancestors had no idea that this decision would change the future of life on Earth forever. Living in open grasslands demanded new ways to survive. Walking on four legs was no longer enough. Standing upright offered surprising advantages. From a higher position, our ancestors could spot predators hiding in tall grass. They could also see food from much farther away. Their hands became free to carry fruit, babies, or simple objects. At first, walking on two legs was slow and awkward. It was less about speed and more about survival. Generation after generation, this new way of moving slowly improved. Bones changed, muscles adapted, the spine reshaped itself, feet developed stronger arches, the pelvis evolved to support an upright body. Tiny changes, repeated millions of times, eventually created something completely different from the creatures that came before. Human evolution had truly begun. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors continued to change. Every generation looked almost identical to the one before it. No one woke up different overnight. Evolution worked in silence, so slowly that if you watched it happen, you would never notice. But over millions of years, those tiny changes reshaped an entire species. Around 4 million years ago, one of our most famous ancestors appeared. Scientists call them Australopithecus. They were unlike any creature that had existed before. Standing only about 4 feet tall with long arms, curved fingers, and small brains, they still looked partly like apes, but they had mastered something extraordinary. They could walk on 2 legs, not perfectly, not as efficiently as modern humans, but well enough to travel across the African grasslands while keeping their hands free. That simple ability would change everything. The African landscape offered opportunity, but it also brought constant danger. Every journey for food carried enormous risks. Lions, saber-toothed cats, hyenas, crocodiles, even giant birds capable of killing small animals. Almost every predator saw early humans as prey. Unlike many animals, our ancestors had no claws, no sharp teeth, no thick fur. They couldn't outrun the fastest hunters. They couldn't overpower stronger animals. By every measure, they should have disappeared, yet they survived. Not because they were stronger, but because they slowly became smarter. One of humanity's greatest advantages wasn't strength, it was cooperation. Instead of living alone, early human groups stayed close together. Adults protected children. Older individuals shared experience. Younger members learned by watching. A warning cry from one individual could save an entire group. Working together increased everyone's chance of survival. This simple habit, helping one another, became one of evolution's greatest inventions. Millions of years later, that same instinct would allow humans to build villages, cities, and civilizations. Australopithecus didn't invent technology, but they were becoming increasingly curious. They explored, they experimented, they remembered. If a particular tree produced fruit every season, they returned. If a dangerous river contained crocodiles, they learned to avoid it. Every successful decision increased the chances of survival. Natural selection quietly rewarded curiosity. Those who adapted survived longer. Those who learned faster passed their genes to future generations. Slowly, almost invisibly, the human brain began preparing for something much bigger. There were no schools, no books, no spoken history. Nature taught every lesson. A child learned by watching adults search for food. They learned which berries were safe, which animals were dangerous, where clean water could be found. Every mistake carried consequences, sometimes fatal ones. Knowledge wasn't written down, it lived inside the memories of the group. And passing that knowledge from one generation to the next became one of humanity's earliest traditions. Life moved slowly. There were no clocks, no calendars, no schedules. The rising sun signaled the beginning of each day. The setting sun meant it was time to find safety before darkness arrived. Days blended into seasons. Seasons became years. Years became thousands of generations. While everything seemed unchanged, evolution never stopped working. Bones continued adapting. Brains slowly expanded. Communication became more advanced. Our ancestors were unknowingly preparing for the next great leap in human history. Then, around 2.5 million years ago, something remarkable happened. A new species emerged. Scientists call them Homo habilis, the handy human. Their brains were noticeably larger than those of Australopithecus, but their greatest achievement wasn't intelligence alone. For the first time in history, humans began shaping stones into simple tools. It was a breakthrough that would transform survival forever. A sharp-edged rock could cut meat, break bones to reach nutritious marrow, scrape animal hides, process plants more efficiently. These weren't just rocks anymore. They were the beginning of technology, and with the first tools, the story of humanity entered an entirely new chapter. Stone tools may seem ordinary today. A sharp knife can be bought in almost any store. But nearly 2.5 million years ago, the first carefully shaped stone was one of the greatest inventions in human history. For the first time, our ancestors were no longer relying only on their bodies, they were beginning to use their minds. Scientists believe Homo habilis was among the first human species to consistently create stone tools. These tools were incredibly simple. A hard rock was struck against another until a sharp edge appeared. That was enough. With those sharp edges, our ancestors could cut meat from animal carcasses much faster than before. They could crack open bones to reach the rich marrow hidden inside. They could slice roots and tough plants that had once been impossible to eat. Even the skin of dead animals could now be removed and used for warmth or shelter. The tools were crude, but they changed everything, because for the first time, human survival depended not only on muscles, but on ideas. A better diet brought unexpected rewards. Meat and bone marrow provided large amounts of energy. That extra energy helped support one of the most expensive organs in the body, the brain. Over thousands of generations, human brains slowly became larger and more complex. Not overnight, not even over centuries, but over hundreds of thousands of years. With larger brains came better memory, better planning, better communication, and better problem solving. Our ancestors were no longer reacting to the world, they were beginning to think ahead. Many people imagine early humans as fearless hunters chasing giant animals with spears. The truth was far different. For a long time, our ancestors were not the kings of the food chain. They were often scavengers. They waited until lions or hyenas finished eating. Only then would they rush in, grab whatever meat remained, and escape before the predators returned. It was dangerous work. One mistake could mean death. But every successful attempt meant food for the entire group. Survival depended on courage and perfect timing. Around 1.9 million years ago, another remarkable species appeared, Homo erectus. In many ways, they looked surprisingly human. They were taller, stronger, their legs were longer, allowing them to walk and run much greater distances. Their brains had grown significantly larger than those of Homo habilis. For the first time, humans could travel across enormous landscapes without quickly becoming exhausted. This ability would eventually allow them to spread far beyond Africa. Until this point, nearly all human evolution had taken place in Africa. But Homo erectus changed history. Small groups began following rivers, coastlines, and migrating animals into completely unfamiliar lands. Generation after generation, they slowly expanded into the Middle East, Asia, and eventually parts of Europe. No one planned this journey. There was no destination. Families simply followed food, water, and safer places to live. Without realizing it, they became the first explorers in human history. Then came one discovery that transformed human evolution forever: fire. For countless generations, humans feared it. Lightning strikes could ignite forests, volcanoes could fill the sky with flames, fire destroyed everything in its path. But eventually, someone stopped running. Instead of fearing fire, they learned to control it. No one knows exactly who the first person was. Their name has been lost forever. Yet their discovery changed the future of our species more than almost anything else. Fire gave humans something no other animal possessed: warmth during freezing nights, light after sunset, protection from many dangerous predators. But perhaps its greatest gift was cooked food. Cooking softened meat and plants. It killed many harmful bacteria and parasites. Food became easier to chew, easier to digest, and it released more energy than raw food. That extra energy helped fuel the continued growth of the human brain. Around campfires, families gathered together. They shared food, protected one another, and perhaps for the very first time, they began telling stories. Those glowing fires may have become the birthplace of human culture itself. By now, humanity had changed beyond recognition. Our ancestors walked upright, used stone tools, controlled fire, worked together in groups, and explored lands no human had ever seen before. But the greatest challenges were still ahead. A brutal ice age was approaching. It would freeze much of the world, destroy entire ecosystems, drive countless species to extinction, and force humans to adapt once again or disappear forever. By the time humans had mastered fire, crafted better tools, and spread beyond Africa, the planet itself began to change. Temperatures slowly dropped. Winters became longer. Snow-covered landscapes that had once been green. Massive glaciers expanded across continents. This was the beginning of the Ice Age. For countless animals, it was a disaster. Entire ecosystems disappeared. Food became scarce. Only the toughest species could survive. For humans, this was the greatest challenge they had ever faced. Imagine waking up every morning surrounded by freezing winds. The ground is hard with ice. Trees are rare. Food is almost impossible to find. Every hunting trip could last for days. Every mistake could cost a life. Yet humans refused to give up. Instead of surrendering to nature, they adapted. Animal skins became clothing, bones became needles, wood and mammoth tusks became shelters. Fire burned day and night, protecting families from the deadly cold. The Ice Age wasn't just testing human strength, it was testing human intelligence. The Ice Age was home to creatures unlike anything alive today. Woolly mammoths crossed frozen plains in enormous herds. Woolly rhinoceroses wandered through icy valleys. Giant deer carried antlers wider than a modern car. Cave bears slept through long winters, and packs of wolves hunted across endless snowfields. Early humans lived among these giants. Sometimes they hunted them, sometimes they avoided them, and sometimes they became the hunted. Life was a constant battle between hunger and survival. One of the biggest surprises in human evolution is this. For most of our history, modern humans were not the only human species on Earth. Several different human relatives lived at the same time. The most famous were the Neanderthals. They lived across Europe and parts of Western Asia. Neanderthals were shorter and more powerfully built than modern humans. Their muscles were incredibly strong. Their large noses helped warm freezing air before it reached their lungs. They were perfectly adapted to cold climates. For many years, people believed Neanderthals were primitive and unintelligent. Today, scientists know that wasn't true. They made sophisticated stone tools. They hunted large animals together. They cared for injured members of their groups. Some even buried their dead. They were not monsters. They were humans, just a different kind. Another human species remained completely unknown until very recently. In 2010, scientists studying a tiny finger bone discovered evidence of an entirely new group of ancient humans. They became known as the Denisovans. Very little of their skeleton has ever been found. Yet DNA revealed something extraordinary. Modern humans didn't simply replace them. In many regions, they had children together. Even today, millions of people carry Denisovan DNA inherited from ancestors who lived tens of thousands of years ago. Human history wasn't a straight line. It was a family tree with many branches. Some survived, most disappeared. Around 300,000 years ago, another species appeared in Africa, Homo sapiens, us. At first, they didn't seem dramatically different from earlier humans. They still hunted, they still gathered food, They still faced the same dangers, but inside their skulls. Something remarkable was happening. Their brains were becoming capable of abstract thought. They could imagine things that didn't yet exist. They could plan far into the future. They could teach ideas with increasing complexity. Knowledge no longer disappeared when one individual died. It could be passed from generation to generation. That changed everything. Around evening campfires, something extraordinary began to happen. Families didn't just share food anymore, they shared ideas. A hunter could explain where animals migrated. An elder could warn children about dangerous valleys. Parents could teach survival without their children needing to experience every mistake themselves. Over time, those conversations became stories. Stories became traditions. Traditions became culture. Culture became one of humanity's greatest survival tools. Unlike claws or sharp teeth, knowledge could grow with every generation. For thousands of years, Homo sapiens shared the world with Neanderthals and other human relatives. Then, slowly, those other branches disappeared. Scientists still debate exactly why. Climate change, competition for food, disease, small populations, or perhaps a combination of all these factors, whatever the reason. By around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had become the last surviving human species on Earth. For the first time in millions of years, the human family tree had only one branch left. But our journey was far from over. The next revolution would not come from surviving nature. It would come from learning to reshape it. For nearly 300,000 years, Homo sapiens lived as hunters and gatherers. Every day followed the same rhythm: wake with the sunrise, search for food, protect the family, find shelter before darkness. It was a life shaped entirely by nature. No farms, no permanent homes, no cities. For thousands of generations, this was simply the way humans lived. Then something extraordinary happened. It wasn't a new species, it wasn't a new tool, it was a new idea. Around 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age came to an end, the climate became warmer and more stable. Plants began growing in predictable seasons. Wild grains spread across fertile valleys. Some people noticed that seeds dropped into the soil would grow into new plants. Instead of searching endlessly for food, they could begin producing it. This was the birth of agriculture. It seems simple today, but at the time it was one of the greatest revolutions in human history. For the first time, people could stay in one place instead of constantly moving. Permanent settlements slowly appeared. Families built simple homes from mud, wood, and stone. Children grew up in the same place where they were born. Food could be stored for the future. People no longer needed to spend every day searching for their next meal. As villages grew larger, new jobs emerged. Some people became farmers, others made tools, some crafted pottery, others became builders. For the first time, not everyone needed to hunt. Human society was becoming more complex. Over thousands of years, villages became towns, towns became cities. People invented writing to keep records. Trade connected distant communities. Laws organized society. Temples and monuments rose from the earth. Great civilizations emerged in places like Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China. Everything humanity built, from the first village to the tallest skyscraper, can be traced back to one incredible journey that began millions of years earlier on the African savanna. Many people believe evolution ended once civilization began, but evolution never truly stops. It simply changes pace. Today, humans are no longer shaped mainly by lions, harsh winters, or famine. Instead, medicine, technology, diet, and our environment continue to influence our species in different ways. Scientists have found that some populations evolved the ability to digest milk into adulthood. Others developed genetic adaptations to high altitudes, allowing them to live where oxygen levels are low. Even resistance to certain diseases has evolved over time. Human evolution is still happening, just in ways that are often invisible within a single lifetime. Look around you. Every road, every book, every language, every computer, every satellite orbiting Earth, every hospital, every piece of music, every work of art. All of it exists because a small group of ape-like ancestors survived impossible odds millions of years ago. They endured changing climates, escaped powerful predators, crossed unfamiliar continents, learned to use fire, created tools, shared knowledge, raised families, and passed on everything they had learned, generation after generation. Without them, none of us would be here. Human evolution is not just a story about bones and fossils. It is the story of curiosity, of resilience, of adaptation. It reminds us that our greatest strength was never our speed or our size. It was our ability to learn, cooperate, and imagine a better future. From the first uncertain steps on two legs to the first spark of fire, from the icy winds of the Ice Age to the rise of cities and civilizations. Every chapter of our history is connected. The journey from ancient forests to the modern world took millions of years, and in many ways, that journey is still unfolding. The next chapter of human evolution has not been written yet. Perhaps it will be written by us. If you enjoyed this journey through the story of human evolution, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next exploration into the forgotten history of humanity. Thank you for watching, and remember, to understand where we are going, we must first understand where we came from.